recording. There we go.
You're listening to Music Club, and in this edition, we are going to be talking about the Sisters of Mercy. So you don't have to. Hi, I'm JR.
And I'm Eric.
And I'm Mark.
And so I'm doing something slightly different with Music Club because, regular listeners to our feed will know we've been doing the Music Club thing for a couple of years, and usually it's the same three of us, which can make for some dull conversations. Not really. But it sort of limits the things that we can talk about because sometimes there'll be a band that one of us wants to talk about and the other two are just, I've never seen them, never had any of their records, wouldn't know what I could bring to the conversation. So I thought it might be an idea instead to bring some ringers in and sort of turn Music Club occasionally into a podcast where one of the regulars has a conversation with a couple of ringers so that we can sort of spread the wings of Music Club for a bit. And to that end, I brought in Eric and I brought in Mark. And so that the listener has a little bit of context as to who you are, I'm going to force you to speak uninterrupted for 60 seconds about yourselves. And that will be by way of an introduction to the audience. Do I have a volunteer for who wants to go first? No, I didn't think I would. Eric! Eric, alphabetically, you're going for... I just want you to say, oh, I'm such and such. This is the things that I do. You know the kind of thing. I've got an egg timer. It's turned. You've got 60 seconds.
Well, hi. My name's Eric Drass, and I'm a fine artist and musician. But I've known JR since we were very, very young. 16, maybe?
I thought this might come out a little bit later.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it'll return. But yes, my first ever band was with JR. Father Zodiac Chinwarp and the Love Children from Milton Keynes, I think was the full title.
Oh my God, I didn't even remember that.
Yeah, and it was a synth pop duo. It was quite a thing. But I guess my fondest and greatest memory of JR is the fact that he used to make me these compilation tapes of cool records I should know about. And I would say 80% of my music taste to this day was probably dictated by things that were introduced by music from your collection. So yeah, profound influence over my musical tastes.
Unbelievable. You've 60 seconds is up, but carry on if you want. You basically...
smoke. Yeah, very much so. But...
Carry on, but instead of talking about me, talk about you.
As I say, I'm a fine artist and erstwhile musician. I'm currently recording a concept album about aliens and telepathy. There you go. That's the end of my 60 seconds.
Oh, wow. That is a nice bit of context. Mark, can you top that?
Probably not.
You've got 60 seconds, though.
Right, I'm Mark Couperthwaite. I've known JR for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
We started chatting on Facebook when he was talking about the Sisters of Mercy on the Sisters of Mercy group. And I think that's the wonderful thing about Facebook and stuff like that. A lot of the time it's awful, but then other times you can just meet somebody from the other end of the country who you've never seen before in your life and just get on like a house on fire. It's amazing, really, when you think about it. I'm 56.
Bands? Have you played in bands?
I played in bands.
This is the context that people need.
I've only ever been in one goth band, though,
right?
Which was the dreadfully titled Gelatine Amphetamine.
Oh, nice!
Which you can see where the influences for that name came from. I think I was probably about 17 or 18.
I think
and we had a drum machine, a bass, and a guitar.
Oh, yeah.
That was it. So it was very Sisters, but.
Your
not
first
very
album,
good at all.
Your first album would have been called Amphetamine Tragic, is that right?
Possibly, yes. Possibly, yes. Amphetamine Disarray instead
Fair
of Logic, yes. Been in lots of other bands since then. Am I up to my 60 seconds yet? Your 60 seconds seems to go really quick, Eric.
No, your 60 seconds has been and gone a long time ago.
Oh, right.
I just didn't want to cut you off. The 60-second thing. The 60-second thing is nonsense, really, to be honest. But that gets us going. That gets us talking, and so therefore, what we've established is that we're all around about the same age, give or take a year or three in one direction or another. And that's quite important because the conversation that we're going to have is basically going to start more or less in the same place. And so my habit on this podcast is to kind of go first, to sort of take the weight off the guest or the co-podcaster so that I can get things rolling and so that they have an idea about where I want the conversation to go. In other words, I'm going to say, what was your first experience of the Sisters of Mercy? But I'll start to get us rolling. In 1983, I was hanging out with a bunch of friends. We were smoking in the bike sheds behind the sports field at the school. And the two things that we were really into were fags and The Cure. And as part of what is comes after you sort of listen to sort of pornography 1,500 times or whatever, is that you get into other music that has sort of heavy doom laden guitars and very heavy drum sounds, sort of drums that and not like pop drums where you're creating a rhythm for dancing necessarily, but drums that are kind of doing more of the heavy instrumental lifting in some ways, become a lead instrument rather than a sort of backing instrument in some ways, I think, which is probably true of pornography and of the Sisters' early stuff. So I probably got into the Sisters of Mercy around about the middle to the tail end of 1983, I would say. And the first record of theirs that I bought when it came out would have been Body and Soul the following year. So, Eric, you're slightly younger, so I'll come back to you afterwards. Mark, I think you're slightly older. Do you remember what your first Sisters experience
I was
was?
thinking about this before, and it must have been about 83, the same as you. It certainly wasn't from day dot. We didn't have such wonderful things like Spotify and Facebook and the internet in those days, did we? It was all about going and buying, well, smash hits up to a point and then going on to the NME and things like that. So I think I probably heard them first on John Peel,
Right.
I would say. And it would have been about 83, I think.
See, they're not really the kind of thing you associate with John Peel, and yet they did a Peel session, didn't they? I think.
Yeah, they did. I think they did a Peel session. They did what's the other one? It's a Kid Jensen one, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember the Kid Jensen one at the time.
No.
I don't think I really listened to him, but yeah, and I think the first single I bought of theirs would have been Alice.
Yeah.
But it wasn't at the time it came out. It was a bit later.
I'm pretty sure
because
the first one
I found it in the record shop.
I think Alice would have been the first one I bought too. But yeah, like you say, sort of later in 1983.
Yeah.
And then we'll get into sort of what comes afterwards as we go, because I think the conversation is going to be, well, what do you think of this thing happening? And that sort of stuff. Eric, what would your first experience have been, do you know?
I think it would have been you giving me a tape with them on, I suspect. I think it probably was. I would have been 1986, maybe? I want to say 86, 87. Probably.
I think we met in late 85, but we didn't get to know each other until early 86 or something, I think. I'm not sure.
And we had a mutual friend who lived in the same village as me, Steve.
Yeah.
Who very much dressed the part as a goth and was kind of a fascinating creature. I remember he used to argue with his dad, and his dad would punish him by throwing his crimpers in the dustbin. I remember that. It was a frequent thing. He'd have to go and get his crimpers back out because his dad would throw them away. But I was very fascinated. I think it's going to sound slightly shallow, but I was kind of fascinated by the aesthetic as much as I was by the music.
Yeah.
Like they just have a really strong visual look, not only by, people dressing as goth, but just the records themselves are very powerful visual things. They were quite exciting to have the set of them, and to line them up. And that kind of
I agree with you totally, yeah. It was, goth was 50% music, 50% aesthetic.
Yeah, totally.
Do you know what?
It was a lifestyle.
Well, after I said, shall we do this Sunday? And then I thought about it for a bit. Do you know what struck me? And I was thinking, why did you? Because the Sisters of Mercy were I was very, very into the Sisters of Mercy during the course of 84 and 85.
Yeah.
And, more so. So The Cure was the first band I think that I was massively into. But with The Cure, I really liked the records, but it kind of stopped there. But the Sisters, as you say, it was more than that. It was the aesthetic, it was the aura of the band. But you know what struck me thinking about this for the last couple of days? Blade Runner came out in 1982, didn't it? And
Hmm.
Blade Runner was so different, even from other science fiction
Mm.
films. There'd been nothing like it before. And there was something about Blade Runner where it's not that it's gloomy, but it has this sort of surface appearance of being gloomy. But what it is instead is very textured, and it's textured in such a way that the textures are hard to see. It's something that you have to really look into in order to see all the different levels of it. But it has this sort of, like I say, surface appearance of being gloomy. I think that Sisters of Mercy, in some ways, the same thing. There's this kind of melding of very modern, so drum machines, electric guitars, but at the same time, something very primal and primitive. So in the film, it's this sort of like 1940s architecture and stuff like that that they're recording everything in, with spaceships and stuff flying around. Sisters of Mercy, you've got drum machines, but the drum machines are playing like tribal rhythms. So you've got this weird disjuncture between what's going on at the back of your head and what's going on at the front of your head. And so there's this level to them, a sort of layer about them that sort of the aesthetic, I think, partly comes out of. It's this weird thing where you can't pin down whether it feels really modern or whether it feels really ancient, but there's something timeless about it because of that.
Yeah, I've been listening to them over the past few weeks since we first started discussing them on that Facebook
Yeah.
group and going back into it again. And I haven't listened to them for years. And I've really enjoyed listening to them again. Really, really enjoyed it. Um, they travel well,
Yeah.
I
I'm
think.
I'm the same. I hadn't listened to him for ages. And then I've had this project for the last few weeks, which is the reason why we came into contact. And Eric will know about it too. I shan't go into it because it's not for anybody casually listening to this. But that's made me listen to them a whole lot more closely than I ever had before. And especially as I've not, like you, not listened to them for a long time. Eric, is it something that you've kept up with? Or are they, we'll come back around to sort of the timeline and what have you in a minute.
Yeah. I'll go through periods of
Yeah.
kind of revisiting them, and some of them I actually in because we're going to have this chat. I was listening to first and last night with my daughter, my 20-year-old daughter, and say, "Look, I'm going to talk
Right.
about this record. I haven't listened to it really for a while. I'm going to play, put it on cooking, and I could sing every single word, right? And
Yeah.
like that part of my brain, and I was thinking, oh, I remember distinctly, it was Marianne, and I remember listening to Marianne on my Sony Walkman going on my first ever plane flight out of the country and remember
Wow.
like being in the clouds and listening to Marion and thinking it was so super cool, and I would have been 15 or something. So it's true as because it happened at such an important developmental part. It really sticks to you. The bands that you love when you're 15, 16, 17 are the ones you love forever, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think
Yeah, yeah.
And you come back round to them now. We're all middle-aged and sort of, pushing on into the sort of latter half, and we're all coming back round to the things that we used to like, right?
yeah, I was actually up visiting a friend of mine who was in one of my bands up in Glasgow, and we put it on. We put First and Last on, and everyone was like, "Oh, I love this record," and it was like a kind of thing that we could all connect to because we all loved this record back in the day, and it still works. It's like it's. I must have listened to that record thousands of times. I don't think I can say
Yeah.
that true of many other bands, but
I've got
a
a
lot.
signed gatefold one version of it in the loft somewhere, but I can't
Ooh.
find it.
Oh, that's bad news.
I think it was on that same group actually quite a few years ago. It might have been a different sisters group, but somebody had put on that they got a signed with two of them, and I went, I'm sure I've got a signed by all four of them at the time, first, last, and
Right.
always in the loft. And then about 15 people PM'd me, offering me like up to €350, I think was the
Wow.
top one for it. And I
Wow.
was like, oh my God, right as I went up, can't find it anywhere. It needs to be when we move house. I will
Yes.
find it and go, yes.
I
But
had
yeah, I
the.
did.
I remember
Sorry,
now.
go on.
You've reminded me. I had the gatefold as well, but let's go back a bit because for me, and so we'll do a bit of a journey, and probably it'd be me and Mark for a couple of minutes. Because so when I got into them, Alice, Temple of Love, you sort of ingest that whole early period all in one go, basically, don't you? I had friends who had the records, who put them on tape for me, and then you go out and buy the records yourself.
I mean, there wasn't a massive amount prior to Temple, was it? You think about it, you probably got what, 3 or 4 singles with B-sides.
And you were lucky as hell if you could get a copy of Damage Done. Or even Body Electric. Body Electric was rare as hell when I was looking as well. I think I got a copy of Body Electric, but not Damage Done until years later. But because you ingest that whole lot all in one go, all the independent singles basically all in one go, they moved to Warner's, they released Body and Soul, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, Sisters of Mercy have gone soft rock. What hell has happened here? Body and Soul felt like such a weird place for them to go. And it weirdly felt, I wouldn't have even known this expression at the time. It felt like they'd sold out or that they'd changed into something else weirdly.
Was that before or after Reptile House?
After Reptile House.
Yeah. So I think for me, Reptile House is the peak, I think.
Is it? Yeah,
in many ways. It's probably the one I come back to the most if I want that vibe. After
Reptile House
in the dark is still, it's as great now as it ever was. And
Reptile House is Ennio Morricone on Downers, right?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But even then, I think actually
what was the first thing Hussey played on?
I think it was it Body and Soul or was it Walk Away? I think it might have been Walk Away. I'm not sure. I don't have any of the information in front of me, so.
No. Well, it would have been those first and last singles, right?
Yeah.
Around that time.
Actually, if you listen to I don't know if you'll have heard this, Eric, but Mark will have. If you listen to the demo of Garden of Delight with Andrew Eldridge singing on it. So Garden of Delight, the sisters never...
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, I heard it once and I never want to hear it again. I could see how upset Eldridge was to be singing those words.
He did not want to be doing that. And you can hear the pain in his voice.
Yeah.
And it's no wonder. But that shows the difference, doesn't it? Yeah. That was the weird thing for me. Wayne Hussey comes into this band who've got this history, who've got this back catalogue. He must know what he's walking into. And yet he seems to be trying to make them do something unnatural that's not...
I mean, he was in Dead or Alive previously, right? So he was already in a kind of pop sensibility.
Yeah, weird, isn't it?
Well, you see, was he not... He left Dead or Alive before they went to PWL.
But they'd always been, but even before
they were kind of very, very twisted and like Dead or Alive. They were sort of definitely part of the Liverpool indie underground Eric scene, before Pete Waterman got his dirty little mitts on them.
Lovely.
I'm not sure whose mitts are dirtier in that context, but that's probably a different podcast.
But I think Hussey, I read both his autobiographies. They're very entertaining, by the way.
Right.
Especially the first one where he goes on about, I think the first one ends at the end of the Sisters.
Right.
And the second one starts at the start of the mission. And it's a good read from those early Sisters. Well, not really they are early sisters, aren't they? Still, of course, they were. But the arguments and things like that they were having at the time was quite ridiculous, really, when you look back on it. But it's an entertaining read. Hussey's biography. It's well written, I think.
It's probably partly ghost written or something. I don't know, actually.
No, apparently he wrote it. No, I'm pretty sure he wrote it himself because he lives in South America now or something, I think.
Oh, really? It's a knee-jerk reaction to say it's probably ghost-written. And then you think, no, hang on, these people are involved in the arts. Of course they can write. What are you talking about?
Yeah, we've all read Hussey lyrics.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all read the lyric sheet when the first Mission album came out and thought, that's why you need a ghostwriter.
The autobiography doesn't rhyme all the way through.
On the subject of Hussey and the Mission, I could never get into them. But
they were all that was available.
I liked them.
See, I really, really wanted. So the Sisters broke up just at the point when I would have loved to go and see them, and you and I went to see the Mission a couple of times, right? I think,
And we saw the sisters later, but different
Yeah, we saw the
lineup.
sisters
But we'll
later,
get to that.
but they were very much like, I love this music and I love this band, and all I've got is Wayne Hussey and Craig Adams doing sort of hippie, when people throwing all the scarves in the air. That was the thing, wasn't it?
Did you see Ghost Dance with me about that time? Or was
I
I
did.
with... You did, yeah. Mark.
In fact, I heard an anecdote about him only yesterday. Had a friend over for dinner who apparently went up to going to music college with him.
With Gary Marks or Wayne Hussey?
Gary Marks. Gary Marks went on to do a sort of music degree, and this guy was in the same.
Wow!
Apparently, he's teaching music now. Apparently, Gary Marks.
He played a gig not that long ago, didn't he?
I saw he's got his kind of 70s thing back, hasn't he? But
did he do it in his elephant hat? He did some videos and his record covers. He's always wearing his like elephant mask.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the sisters. So Mark. Yes. Okay, so the sisters. Did you see the sisters live in the 1980s?
I've seen them twice. Once in the 1980s and once in the early 90s.
Oh, we're the same page. I saw them once in the
1984, I think it was. Was it 1985? No, it was 1985. I think I'd have just turned 16.
Right.
In Manchester.
Yeah.
So, yes, it was one of the first gigs I'd been to.
It was my very first.
16. Was it? Your first gig was Sisters.
I was 14, I think, or maybe 84. Maybe I just turned... No, hang on. October 84. No, just turned 16. So it was about a week or so after my 16th birthday, I think.
Well, mine was about March, I think, and my birthday's in February, so I was about
just
a week after my 16th birthday, yeah.
We went in, so they were in Exeter, which is a few miles from where I live. So we had to so 3 or 4 of us had bought tickets, and we persuaded my dad to drive us there, then drive home. Then drive back 2 hours later and pick us up again and drive us all home. And he did it. Bless him. It's about 10 miles from where we were. So it was about a 30 or 40 minute drive each way. So he spent a good 2.5 hours in the car that night.
So I'm about 30 miles from Manchester, so it's about an hour or something.
Did you bus it then, or did you get a lift as well?
No, we got a lift. There was a couple of us went. I think it was, I can't remember now. It's probably my mate's dad, I think.
Yeah,
it's a lifetime ago.
We went
full use of all my limbs and my ears and things.
Not these days. We went in, and it was on the first floor of this building. The building is actually a market, an indoor market, and the indoor market's downstairs. And then upstairs, there was like a concert hall. This was not where they were booked to play. They were booked to play somewhere else, but they sold it out so quick, they moved to this bigger venue. We went up the stairs, and as we got to the top of the stairs, and there's all these goths in their sort of late teens and early 20s and what have you. And then we walk in, and there's me, I was the eldest, and there was like 3 others with me who were all 15. And Wayne Hussey was sitting at the first table at the top of the stairs. And as we got to the top of the stairs, the 4 of us, looking as young as we did, and walked into the room, he gave us a look of absolute daggers. He didn't want us to be there. We were too young for that band.
Oh, I hate stuff like that. They should be grateful for fans, whether they are 2 or 102, anybody, throughout time. I don't know. I've always had a problem with stuff like that. I've always been grateful, but that's because I've never made it. So I've always been eternally grateful for anybody that turns up on our gigs.
Do you know what, though? It strikes me now. So Wayne Hussey was sitting there at that table with, not Craig. Is it Craig? The other one? Not Gary Marks. The other one is Craig. Sorry?
Adams.
Craig Adams.
Yeah.
Who went off to be in the Mission with Wayne Hussey, right? So at that table was Craig Adams and Wayne Hussey, but not Andrew Eldridge or Gary Marks.
Well,
makes you think.
Read Hussey's autobiography. Read it. It was very much split for a long time.
I assume you guys have read the crowdfunded one from a couple of years ago. Was it Pay My
No,
Name
I
in Black and
haven't
Gold?
actually.
Oh, it's really, really good. Well worth it.
What's it
Very good.
called?
I want to
Paint
say
My
it's
Name
Paint
in
My Name
Black
in
and
Black and
Gold.
Gold.
Yes, that's
And
right.
it
Yes.
was like crowdsourced, and he kind of put up a chapter, and it was really good. And it's very in depth, kind of 82 to 87
Right.
sisters. And yeah, so there's lots of really interesting backstory there.
Yeah, I
That
bet
does
there
sound
is.
good. That.
I mean, I through a friend of mine was working with Dave Allen, who produced that record, and the stories that he tells about Eldritch and his speed habit are quite toe curling.
I went on Wikipedia as I was doing all this stuff, and I wanted to look up because I thought I'd just do just a little bit of background reading. I wanted to look up a list of all the people who've been in the Sisters of Mercy over the years. But on Wikipedia, what they've got instead is a list of all the people who haven't.
Bit like the Fall.
Well, we saw it was
Yes,
Occasionally, I meet somebody who hasn't been in the Fall. It's
it's
quite rare.
amazing.
wow. When we saw him, it was Tony James, wasn't it?
That's right. Was Patricia Morrison? I can't remember.
No, she was only
No,
ever
it
in the
was.
videos. She never did
Yeah,
anything.
it was after that anyway, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because yeah,
She's in the Damned now, isn't she?
Is
She's
she?
is
married
she
to Vanian, I think.
Wow.
really? Wow.
At least she has been for a long time.
Goth gossip that we didn't know about.
Yeah, well, I think this entire conversation is just catching up, and each of us keeps bringing up something that you're like, oh, I didn't know that, or oh, I didn't remember that.
I mean, there
It's like,
wasn't many people in the Sisters until that first split, really. There's only sort of Ben Gunn and
Yeah.
the classic four, isn't there, really, I think?
basically,
There's
yeah,
a few different Dr. Avalanches.
Hmm.
yeah. Which reminds me, Eric. So this probably goes back to before then. I don't know if you'll remember this at all, but you were talking about Steve just now, the one whose dad was throwing his crimpers in the bin. So Steve was in a band called After the Fall with your older brother.
That's right. I think he was. Yeah. I don't think he ever played, but they did make a noise in my basement for a bit. I think.
They did. And actually, I say the Sisters of Mercy was my first gig, but sort of technically After the Fall was, because they did a gig in a village hall in front of about 20 people, at which they did a cover of First and Last and Always.
Did they? God.
Yeah. So no, actually, that would still be my second gig because that was still after I'd been to see the Sisters of Mercy on Black October in 1984. I had a feeling that you had programmed the drum machine for them, but I think not. I think your older brother had done it.
I think I probably did, to be fair, because I didn't know how to. It was his drum machine because he wanted to be a drummer, and so my parents got him a drum set, and he was just a rubbish drummer. And so he took the drums back and got a drum machine, and then he found it a bit challenging. So I think we nicked it in the end, right? That was the drum machine that we
Yeah,
had in our band. Was that same drum machine?
it
We were
was.
paying on hire purchase on that.
What kind was it?
It was a Roland TR-727.
Ah,
Wow, you remember? I don't remember. I think
You probably still got it.
I probably have. I mean, I upgraded to something much better later on down the line, but it might well still be hanging around.
Yeah.
Nurse Avalanche. That's what we should have called it. I don't know if we ever did. I think we probably
Matron.
did.
now what was oh my god, what were they called? There was a great sort of goth band, sort of late early 90s. Oh my god, the name's just completely gone.
Welcome to the Middle Age Podcast.
Oh,
Yeah.
honestly,
Were they
it's just
drum machine
three
or were they?
people dithering over memories from 30 odd years ago. It's just what are
Speak for
they
yourself. I'm the
called?
oldest one here. I can remember everything like it was yesterday.
They were a
Ish.
great band. There was only two of them. They had a drum machine. They've played Whitby loads of times.
Whitby.
They've played the Whitby Goth Festival loads of times. If Only and
Right.
Sometimes was one of the first ones.
Of
I'm
course, if you're
sure
going to have a
they
goth
had-
festival, it would be at Whitby, wouldn't
Oh
it?
yeah,
They
it's
had
a
a
big
drum
thing, the
machine
Whitby
called
Festival.
Sister
Yeah, of
somebody
course.
or other. I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
You just reminded me of them now. Oh, it'll come to me. I'll just throw it in the
You're-
middle of something in about
Yeah.
10 minutes' time or something.
Right, here's a question then. So I'm aware that we really haven't got into this conversation at all, have we? We're not going to, are
We're
we?
about 1985. We're moving forward slowly, I think.
Very so. I was just going to say, actually, when First and Last and Always came out, I remember a lot of fans being really disappointed with it, including me, when they first heard it, because if you think about it, the band that did Alice, Temple of Love, The Reptile House, this was a much more not
Use the word commercial.
I don't think it's that it's commercial, but
Shiny.
yeah, I think there's just something about it that feels slightly more polished. So Eldritch, as it turns out, produced most of their early records, didn't he? With the one exception being Alice. And then this, they get oh, is he Mike Hedges? Is that right? I might have misremembered. In to produce this.
Well, so it's Dave Allen. Dave Allen produced
Dave
First
Allen.
Last.
Dave Allen. I don't know why I'm thinking Mike Hedges. He did somebody else. Now I'm going down old people's middle-aged podcast road. He comes in and does it, and it sounds much more polished than the stuff they had done before. But I think if you put him together with what Wayne Hussey brings, because what Wayne Hussey brings on the guitar is a bit more sort of musicality. And when I say musicality,
He had a 12 string, is what you mean?
No, it's not that. It's that when I think of Wayne Hussey, I just think of somebody practicing their scales because he just goes up and he comes down and he goes up and he comes down, and it's like do 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 and so on. It just sounds like somebody practicing their scales, which ain't necessarily a bad thing, and he does it really nicely. But prior to that, the Sisters of Mercy had never done that, so they'd never been a chugga 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 band, which is basically what they turn into on their third album, right? They'd always been a band about melody and about a certain amount of counterpoint, but the counterpoint really goes up a gear on First and Last and Always, and I think that's the thing that distinguishes it. And I think that was on very first listen, and obviously, clearly, as we've all said, this was a massive grower, and so now it's an album that you've listened to and I've listened to however many hundreds of times. But on that very first listen, it was like, oh wow, this is not the album I was expecting. I was expecting Reptile House ×2, and this was something else entirely.
Or at least more Temple of Love, I think.
Yeah, like half Reptile House, half Temple of Love, or whatever.
I think all those early ones, I mean, I think a lot of it's a technical thing, as I did. I think all those early ones were done on like 8-track.
Yeah.
So there was no space for making things sound lush and big
they had
and what have you.
They had Warner's money as well, right? So they'd hired in Dave Allen, who'd done all the Cure albums, and they kind of thrown some money at this band who looked like they were going to make them some money back. And so that's why it's a bigger budget, I think. It inevitably makes things a bit glossier, particularly in the 80s.
Well, did they buy the Oberheim DMX for that album, or am I being too much of a geek now?
No, probably, and I have no idea.
I remember watching reading an interview with Eldritch, and him saying, "Well, we've got the Oberheim DMX now drum machine, and you can send your little chip off to America, and with the sounds, and you can get the sounds put onto the chip." And so quite a messing about sampler to a degree.
Yeah,
but I'm not sure whether that was first used on First, Last and Always, or whether they had it before that.
I mean, it has a very consistent sound if you compare it to more contemporary records where people use, a range of drum sounds on an album. Like it has it's like a classic rock band. Like the drummer always sounds like the drummer.
I'm pretty sure that I do watch a lot of absolute crap on YouTube. I really do get stuck in loops for literally months on end. I remember watching this series about this guy was sort of programming songs from the 80s, and I'm pretty sure Madonna used an Oberheim DMX on Holiday.
Oh, there you go.
So
it was around. Yeah.
I can't remember when Holiday was now.
But that was one of the weird. But also, that was one of the weird things about Andrew Eldritch, wasn't it? Here he is, on the one hand, making records like Body Electric and, I don't know, their version of Gimme Shelter or whatever. But at the same time, what he's into is ABBA and Madonna and Jolene and Hot
Big
Chocolate.
ABBA, big ABBA fan.
Oh yeah. But that was the weird part of their influence, that you could, even on their cover versions of songs by those people, you cannot hear that influence coming through, and yet clearly it was there. And clearly that's another bone of contention between him and Hussey, isn't it? Because Hussey doesn't have those same influences.
No, he's more glam rock, wasn't he? Really,
Yeah.
I think.
I
He
remember
was more sort of Sweet and things like that, and Slade.
I probably shouldn't repeat this, but I'm going to, because
Do it.
Well,
Be brave.
no, because I think I can't remember if this was told to me publicly or in private, but the lead singer of the Blow Monkeys, because I got into the Blow Monkeys having seen an advert for them supporting the Sisters of Mercy and taking a chance on their album, and then thinking, Christ, what the hell were this lot doing supporting the Sisters of Mercy? But it turns out that in their early days they sounded a lot more, not heavy, but more in that direction than the Blow Monkeys that you'd know from things like Digging Your Scene. But the singer once said to me, I told him that the reason I found you was because I saw this advert and I took a chance on your album. And what the hell were you doing supporting the Sisters of Mercy? And I'm pretty sure he said to me, oh, because the lead singer, Andrew Eldritch, was a fan and the guitarist couldn't stand us.
Which guitarist would that have been?
Who do you think?
Hussey or Marks?
I think
was it Hussey?
I put two and two together, and I'm assuming he was talking about. I'm not even sure he said the guitarist, but I put two and two together, and I'm pretty sure it was Wayne Hussey he would have been talking about. I think. But the reason it stood out was Andrew Eldritch was a fan of this band who couldn't have been more different, really.
No, I must admit, I just there was it. When was Digging Your Scene? Was it about 87, something like
86,
that? Around
86, yeah.
I remember hearing it at the time, and it just not really gelling with me at all, sort of thing. But since speaking to you, I've gone and listened to that first album.
Oh yeah, which is very different.
It's all right, this, yeah.
But that's
pretty good.
But that's the interesting thing about the Sisters of Mercy, is you wonder how much. So because Andrew Eldritch, or Andrew Taylor, to give him his real name, I guess, has these influences that don't show up in the band. And this is a thing that American bands will do. So British bands tend to just, these are our influences, and so this is what we sound like. But with American bands, often you'll get like classically trained musicians or whatever doing like poodle rock music, because it sells records, because it attracts an audience, and because if you go far enough in a certain direction, doesn't matter, I suppose, whether it's really what you're into, as long as you can put enough of your heart into it that you're not doing it for effect, but that you are giving it some integrity, it can work. And you wonder, looking at Andrew Eldritch, whether actually the Sisters of Mercy is to some degree performative.
Not very much so.
Very
much so. And I think that period, as we discussed, like a music press, and part of my love of the Sisters is I loved the way he'd talk about himself and the way he, what was that quote? It was like what people say, Led Zepp, fuck yeah, was kind of the headline. And like, this is like in the 80s when Led Zepp were like the most hated band in the world. And it was like, no, Led Zeppelin are brilliant. And he was very clever and snarky and gave a good quote. And I think he loved standing up on stage in his leathers surrounded by smoke. I mean, who doesn't, right? I mean, I think he was enjoying himself.
He'd seen Blade Runner too, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if you listen to, as you say, the covers, like the kind of Gimme 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 and the Jolene, very much this is hilarious. Get in on the joke, guys.
As camp as Christmas.
Yeah, exactly.
It is,
and that's
really
part of the appeal. I think the only reason they could get away with doing stuff that could be perceived as bleak and pretentious is that they could take the piss out of themselves as well. And I think that's a very English trait that you may not get in other places in the same way.
For sure. And actually, the music press often, I think the music press who reviewed the records but didn't see the band live kind of missed the joke, didn't they?
Yeah.
So they'd be like, "Oh God, another gloomy record from the Sisters of Mercy," but they didn't. They didn't get the sense of humour behind it. Is there much of a sense of humour behind these records? I think there is. I think it's well hidden, but I think there is, right?
It has to be from the covers, like you said. I mean, the other classic one is Emma.
Mm.
Oh yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
just, I mean, it's a hot chocolate song.
Yeah.
Although it's a
Genius.
very dark hot chocolate song,
Oh
to be
yeah,
fair.
absolutely. But with the, like you say, gimme, 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 Jolene, Emma, but they were all very not songs that you'd think they would ever be covered by that kind of band.
But then, actually, then this corrosion. So that happens. They split up. There's this wrangling about. Well, from what I heard, the split up was fairly amicable until it came to decide who inherits the name the Sisters of Mercy.
Yeah.
And then Wayne Hussey apparently wants to be called the Sisters of Mercy, despite the
No, he
fact
wanted to be the Sisterhood,
No,
right?
Sisterhood.
yeah, or oh, but did he not? I had a feeling that the reason the sisterhood thing came about was because Hussey wanted to claim the Sisters of Mercy name, and then decided that if he couldn't get that, the sisterhood would be like a runner-up prize.
Yeah, so the
No,
Sisterhood was the fans, right? And so that
yeah,
he wanted to take that name, and then Eldritch put out the one with James Ray, right? The single that
Yeah,
everyone thought was Eldritch, but it wasn't really, just to kind of claim the name and piss off Hussey. So, I mean, I mean,
there is a version of that with him singing on it, by the way.
really?
I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there is.
I very much
should have-
enjoyed those SSV MP3s, by the way, as an aside. That was great.
I had a feeling
no,
that
I've
would
not
be up
actually
your
heard them before.
street.
a version of what with him singing on it? Giving Ground.
Giving Ground, yeah. Is there not, or am I
I
imagining
don't
that?
think so.
No, I don't know. No, probably not then. No, I meant a demo version of it rather than
maybe.
one that was ever released. There is,
Possibly.
there are folders circulating amongst Sisters of Mercy fans
I
with
bet.
just hundreds of demos and things. I've got about 15 folders, and I have a feeling that in there I listened to a version of Giving Ground with Eldritch singing on it, but I might
James
be
Ray
making
was
that
close
up.
enough, I think. Didn't
Yeah, yeah, and I think rightly so, because I
I
think that
thought
would
it
have.
was him for years.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
did
thought it
you?
was Eldritch for years, yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, see, I thought they'd made it very clear from the start that it was never not Eldritch singing, or maybe I'm
Maybe I just
misremembering
missed.
that.
Maybe I
Yeah.
just missed that. But it was like I was listening to it for ages and was like, no, I just assumed. I think and didn't really
Right.
think about it any further. I wasn't
Oh, God.
massively keen on it, so I don't think I really
I
played
quite like
it
the album,
like the
actually.
other ones.
I thought it was pretty funny. Again,
Yeah, it's a fun album. Well, you and I did a cover version of one of the songs,
we
didn't
did, didn't we? Yeah.
we did. So we were living in Dawlish, and the Central Park in Dawlish is called Dawlish Green. But we were going to school in Teignmouth, and the Central Park in Teignmouth is called Teignmouth Den. So we did a version of one of the songs of. I can't even remember what the original's called
It's
because
like
I just.
Finland
Finland Red,
Green.
Egypt White.
Yeah,
That's
Egypt
right.
White, yeah.
And we did Dawlish Green, Teignmouth Den. It was good though.
Well done.
That was one of the best things we ever did.
You're getting a sense of what this band was like. Yeah.
I like that one.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
well, wasn't The Mission supposed to be the title of the next Sisters album? Wasn't it supposed to be On Mission and Revenge?
That
Yes,
would make
that's
sense.
right.
So Hussey couldn't let go of it
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
at all. He just couldn't. I think he was possibly fearful, in my opinion, he was possibly fearful that he wasn't famous enough
Yeah.
to start at a certain level
Mm.
with the
He
next
need-
band.
yeah. He needed the connection, otherwise he
Yeah.
thought he'd have to start from scratch, right?
But they both went to number one. In fact, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm fairly sure that the Sisterhood with Giving Ground and the Mission with Serpent's Kiss were the first two indie bands ever to go in straight at number one in the indie charts.
Sounds
Oh, I
about
don't
right.
know. No, yeah. Wouldn't surprise me because that's the thing about the Sisters of Mercy. Their fan base is devoted, very devoted, right? And probably about 3 of them will have found this podcast and will be screaming at their headphones even now after all the shit we've been talking, frankly. But with that kind of that's the kind of devotion that is enough to put Body and Soul, Walk Away, and No Time to, well, not quite No Time to Cry, into the top 50 singles, right?
Mm.
Without all the fuss and the hoopla, and with them being really dark records, frankly, compared to what else was around at the time. We forget this now. But yeah, you'd had The Cure, and they had done Faith and Pornography, but then The Cure had gone kind of pop after that, and they never quite went back. quite as dark as they had been before.
No.
But when the Sisters of Mercy come around with, and remember, they'd not had any album by the time like Body and Soul and Walkaway comes out. Those records didn't sound like anything else, really. Even my comparison with the sort of Cure of the Pornography is only part the way there. There's not really anything like that at the time. They're massive.
I don't know. What about? I'm going to throw a name into the mix here.
Oh, go on.
Probably the first band of that kind of ilk that I got into, which was Bauhaus.
Yeah, I was going to say Bauhaus.
Yeah, but I don't. Oh, that's it. Yeah, no, there are other bands who are doing dark things, but the point I'm making is I don't think the Sisters really sounded like any of them.
Well, I think that's, as you say, it's the drum machine, right? I think no one was
there's that
drum machine forward in the same way.
Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry is probably as close as I can actually think of in terms of the sound. Actually, Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry also from Yorkshire. I have a feeling they are.
They were from Leeds, I think. I think they were.
Oh, there you go. Contemporaries.
Skeletals were from Leeds. Sisters were from Leeds. Red Lorry were from Leeds.
Mind you, I grew up near Leeds, and at the time it was pretty bloody horrible. No, I didn't really say that. I've just said that for effect.
No, it was. I agree with you. It's beautiful now, though. It's lovely. I went there about 18 months ago, and I was like, oh, my God. It must be about 30 years since I last went there, and I was like, what, amazingly nice.
Oh, we never went into Leeds when I was a kid, so I am absolutely talking absolute nonsense. But then, so you have all this split up, you have the sisterhood, the mission start, Ghost Dance, and then there's a couple of years of silence, which at the time felt like a long time. These days it would be nothing, right? These days you can go 5 years without hearing from an artist, and then all of a sudden they're there again. Couple of years, and then you get this Corrosion, which just from the band that had, and like I say, First and Last No Way sounded a bit different from what had come before, but more or less it's kind of an organic progression from Body Electric up to First and Last No Ways. Then when this Corrosion came out, it just doesn't sound anything like the same band, although at the same time clearly it shares the DNA, because it's that singer, it's that imagination, and if it's performative, it's that same performance. But it's choirs, it's Jim Steinman, it is. What did you think when you first heard it? I guess is my question.
I was delighted that they had a new record by the Sisters. I think I was like, whatever they could have put a fart on a record, I would have been delighted. And the fact that it was so insane and bombastic, it was brilliant. It's a brilliant piece of crazy bombastic pop. It happened to be made by my band that I thought was really cool, you know.
Yeah.
And they then had a little bit of a breakthrough, right? You'd see them on Top of the Pops and stuff, or
they
made videos and that kind of thing. They were suddenly, wow, this band that were cultish that I never really got to see, and then imploded. Oh, they're back! Yay!
And exciting. And you'd see them either and so it wasn't smoke anymore. It was either pouring rain or boiling sun.
Well, yeah, the desert. Yeah, with his stick and his moustache or his beard. His beard, wasn't it? His beard and his stick.
Yeah.
I think I was. I loved this Corrosion. That was the first thing I heard from it. I think I was massively disappointed
with the rest of the album, or just altogether.
Yeah, with everything associated with it. To be honest, I'm just going to be a miserable get now, aren't I?
No, it's fair.
It had lost all that. It was a totally different band. It took me a long time to realise that and let go, to be perfectly honest. But it was a totally different band. There are great songs on it, don't get me wrong. Lucretia was great. This Corrosion was great. But I don't know, the rest of it...
Yeah, there's a lot of filler on that album, I think. Given it had been so long, there could have been a few more good tunes. I agree.
And the same with the one after it. The same with Vision Thing as well. I love Ribbons.
Ribbons is the only good track on that record, I think.
The rest of it can... Not really.
There's a different approach, a very different approach. So going back to what I was saying before, and so I wasn't a big fan of Floodland. But that's not to say I disliked it. I just kind of liked it a lot less, really.
Yeah.
And the same with the album afterwards with Vision Thing. It's, to me, it feels like a different band. But there's something in the DNA. You recognise the approach to the vocals, the singer. You recognise the aesthetic, of course, is still there. It's been modified, obviously, but it's basically still the same aesthetic. But going back to what I was saying before, I like counterpoint. Counterpoint. And I didn't even know what the expression was at the time, but that's always been the thing that I've looked for in music. And it's not just counterpoint melody. I remember once I wrote a song, recorded it, played it to a friend who was musical. And he said, you can't do that. He said, you've got two different rhythms going on at the same time. And I was like, that's what's so fucking good about it, you idiot. But do you know what I mean? I like when there's a collision of sound. And I think what happens with Floodland, and particularly with Vision Thing, is you're no longer getting a collision of different sounds, but instead you've got this sort of monotheical, if there is such a word, sort of huge, let's do this one thing. And so this corrosion, yeah. Oh, but this corrosion is just this giant explosion of one thing. And Dominion is like a giant explosion of one thing. And then when you get to Vision Thing as well, or Lucretia, My Reflection, he says, oh, we double track the guitar 97 times or something. So there's 97 guitars on that track. And I'm like, yeah, but sadly, they're all playing the same thing. So there might as well just be three.
Do you know what I mean? It's 12 string.
Yeah, I think. But so for me, those two albums.
Well, they're both Eldritch albums, right? Whereas the EPs were Gary Marks and Eldritch, and then the first and last is Hussey and Eldritch fighting with Gary Marks, I think. And you know what I mean? So I think once it becomes solely about Eldritch, Eldritch is like, I'm going to make a bombastic MOR album because I've got big record company money. And you get Vision Thing, and it feels like he's phoning it in. I mean, the best points are things like Ribbons, where it's a bit more interesting.
Where something else
kind
is
of the
going
chugga American rock thing may have made sense for him to try and shift some units, but for us people who loved Alice, it's quite a long way.
There was the single as well. Oh, I've even forgotten what it was called now.
Dr. Jeep.
No. I'm talking about the one that wasn't on an album, but he did with Terry Nunn.
Oh, Under the Gun.
Under the Gun, yeah.
Yeah.
That was very kind of Euro pomp rock, wasn't it? Stadium rock.
Yeah, it was so disappointing. I think the bit where I completely, I had to kind of divorce myself from him completely was when I saw a clip of a Sisters gig on YouTube, and he was there, and he was bald with his sunglasses with a white tracksuit on, and I thought... No,
but then again,
you've gone too far now. A white tracksuit.
But then again, he was all in white on the Mother Russia, the Dominion, rather.
Yeah, it was close then.
So, yeah.
Well, of course, that gig we went to.
I was just about to say.
Yeah, we went to JR, drove up and picked me up at Oxford, and we drove all the way to London, and then tubed it in to see. What was it? It was Wembley Arena. I want to say
that's right, Wembley Arena, yeah.
And me, being my contrary self, decided to go entirely in white. And I distinctly remember being in Wembley Arena, and literally everyone is in black. The entire place is in black. We're standing out in white.
When was that? When was that you went?
1990, I think.
When Tony James was in the band, I think. So they definitely did Ribbon, so it must have been after that, whatever that record was.
It was the Vision Thing. I think it was the Vision Thing tour, or at least...
Must have been 90 or 91, 90 maybe.
Yeah.
See, I went... Me and my wife went literally the month before we got married, so it must have been July 92.
Right.
To the Birmingham NEC to see them. And
right.
Can't remember whether Tony James was in the band then. I know Tim Brashenko was.
Yeah, I think he was.
I'm All About Eve.
Yeah.
And Andreas Brun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I think those
Dr. Avalanche was still in the band.
Amazing.
He's the only person who's never fallen out with Eldritch.
Funny that, isn't it? Mind you, going back to what I was saying before, just to sort of put a pin in that conversation, clearly Gary Marks is what I was missing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, Perfect Sisters is Eldritch and Gary Marks, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
But those gigs then,
the 90... agree.
So, Eric, that was your only experience of seeing them live, right?
Yeah, that's the only time we went, I think. So I didn't see them the first time. I missed them because I was a little bit too young when you saw
Yeah.
them then.
Well, like I
And then we
say,
kind
I
of did
was.
our
Yeah.
pilgrimage. And I mean, he played recently. They played the Roundhouse a couple of times, and part of me is like, I kind of want to go, but I've heard such bad reports that his voice is shot, and they're just kind of phoning it in. That I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't, I'm not
It's
big on
been like
nostalgia
that for
gigs.
about 20 years now. See,
Yeah,
I do love a good nostalgia gig. I
oh,
really
okay.
do. And it's, I don't know. There's a comfort in a good nostalgia gig, I think, to be
Hmm.
honest.
Oh,
And
but
the reason I do love them is because of Bauhaus, because I did it for ages. So going and seeing Bauhaus on the 1999 Resurrection
I
tour.
saw that one when he came out from behind the TV set.
Oh my God, I
That was so
cried.
good.
wow.
Literally, I was stood at the front, and he was doing double dare behind the thing, and then came out to in the flat field, and
Yeah.
there's me and this other old goth at the front, sort of thing. And he just turned to me, and he just went, "I know, mate," and
Nice.
it was amazing. It was incredible, that
Yeah,
gig.
he started the show with this big TV set on the screen and like a film
Oh,
of him
we're
doing
not talking LCD here, mate.
no, like a kind
We're
of
talking.
CRT TV set and doing his full, Pete Murphy dance, and we're like, oh, that's like a video. He's going to be really fat and rubbish, and then he like pops out from behind the TV, and it's really him, and oh my god, it's great.
It was amazing. That was. So yeah, that's
Nice.
why I like nostalgia gigs, but
But you wouldn't
nothing's
do
ever.
Eldritch in 25.
I've struggled every time they've said they're going to tour because I think it will. I think it will ruin. Because if he wears a white tracksuit, I'd just have to walk out. It's like when Susie played those gigs last night. I looked at her, oh no, Sue's playing wearing trainers. I know she's nearly 70, but
Yeah,
she's wearing trainers.
And
I
also,
like
but
that it comes
also,
down to the footwear.
yeah, yeah. But but it also comes down to she's called Susie Sue. What self-respecting 70-year-old goes out and says, "Hi, I'm Susie Sue"?
Susie Sue does. She can do whatever she
Yeah,
wants.
she can. Yeah. I'm with you on that one, Eric. Yeah, she
Fair
has
enough.
cemented her legend for many decades.
Oh,
Whereas,
for sure she has.
yeah.
But
Whereas
what I mean
Eldridge
is,
doesn't, right? Eldridge, he's got obsessive fans. Anyone who's actually been near and worked with him thinks he's a bit of a twat or quite a bit of a bastard. And so he's kind of got this sort of people who like the sisters are willing to put up with the fact that he's a bit of a dick, I think.
and
He is.
also
He's
maybe
very
you,
much like
yeah.
Morrissey and
Yeah.
John Lydon, as in he'll always take a very contrary stance on
Yeah.
things just for effect, I think.
Yeah, which is what I love about him, but it's it's a particular taste. So not a
I know what
crowd
you
pleaser.
mean, but
And I would have liked
a
them to
white
release some
tracksuit's
more
a step
records.
too far.
Well, they nearly released something at about the turn of the century, didn't they? And then it just didn't happen.
Did they? I don't know. I don't know how close they got. I know it was always his sulking with his record company or whatever, but
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, when was Vision Thing? Was it 92? Sorry, yeah, Vision Thing.
Yeah, I
I want to say
think
it's earlier than that. Is it
no
90?
90, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Vision Thing is 90. I think it's
Yeah.
85, 87, 90, isn't it? Let me
Yeah,
check.
I think so.
85, 87,
Because I
90.
Probably,
think it's when we
Yeah.
yeah.
saw them, and they definitely played Ribbons when we saw them, and that was like 90 or 91.
Yeah, it was 9. I'm pretty sure it was 90.
So we're
We
now
did.
35 years on from that, and he still hasn't released anything.
Yeah.
So this is what Eric and I did in 1990. I was living in Exeter. He was living in Oxford. I got up. I went to work. I finished work. I'm a postman. I finished work at about lunchtime. I got in the car. I drove to Oxford. We drove to London. We went to see the Sisters of Mercy. We drove back to Oxford so I could drop him off. I drove back to Exeter so I could go to work. And I worked the other. But while we were at the Sisters of Mercy gig, there was an advert on the wall, and also the Trees, who we also both liked, were playing and didn't play a lot. Not in England. They play in France a lot, but not
Yeah.
in England. We're playing the following night. So I got back to Exeter, went to work, finished work, got back in the car, drove back up to Oxford, picked up Eric, drove to London, went to see And Also the Trees, drove back to Oxford to drop him off, drove back to Exeter, and went back to work.
That's dedication. Yeah.
But you're
That was,
tired just thinking about that now.
It was. That was probably one of the wildest things I've ever done. Although we did get up to a few things actually, to be fair, but this is not a podcast about that. All right, I think we've kind of done it. I think we could probably sort of waffle on a bit for ages, but I think we've kind of done it. I think, though, before we go, we should each pick a favourite track, or maybe not a favourite track, but a favourite release or something. I think it's incumbent upon podcasters when they get to the end of a podcast to kind of round things out by doing either by scoring things or by picking a favourite. So
Favourite cover.
Well, you choose your favourite whatever.
Early song and favourite late song.
No, you can only pick one, Mark.
Oh.
So I'm going to make you pick your favourite cover now.
Favourite cover would have to be Gimme Shelter.
Oh, see, I was going to pick that for my favourite song, even though they didn't write it.
No, Jolene would be my favourite cover. Jolene would be my favourite cover.
Jolene would be, yeah.
Just because of its sheer stupidity.
Well, yeah. Although technically it's never been released. Well, not until that BBC Sessions 12-inch a couple of years ago. It's on there, isn't it? So that's technically the first time it's properly been released. But yeah.
Non-cover, favourite non-cover song, Mark.
Hang on, are you taking over here?
Oh.
Do you know? All right,
Body Electric.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
There's something about it. There's something about Body Electric that's just so muscular, isn't there?
Yeah. No, I would have to pick. It was a toss-up between Body Electric, Alice, and the original Temple of Love. But I'd have to go Body Electric, I think.
Yeah, the original Temple of Love is right up there. At the end of Body Electric, he does that thing that is kind of the goth equivalent, or when I say goth, Bowie and people like that do it, of what the boy bands do when they jump up, when they change key in the chorus towards the end, and everybody goes, oh, and it sort of like makes your heart sort of like ping that little bit harder. So in Body Electric, Andrew Eldritch does the goth equivalent, which is he sings the last chorus half an octave up from the previous one, just to give it a bit of sort of like, oh my God, he's really going for it now. It's the thing he does at the end of Some Kind of Stranger, you know, where everybody thinks, oh my God, he's losing it. Andrew Eldritch, he's getting all emotional. What's going on here? And so, yeah, Body Electric, it does the emotional thing that you get at the end of Some Kind of Stranger, but it also has that really muscular thing that Temple of Love has too. Eric, have you got a favourite early song then?
See, it's a hard one.
It is, isn't it?
I'd say my favourite, I have a lot of time for Reptile House. I have a lot of time for Adrenochrome.
Yeah, yeah.
In terms of just a racket, like an early racket. But I love all of them, you know. It's like... I've probably not listened to Alice that much, but I remember loving Alice.
Yeah, yeah.
It was the first song I learned to play on guitar when I first got a guitar in 1987. It was my friend. I said, I can't play that when my friend was teaching me. And he went, it's really easy. I went, no, it's not. It's all spidery and fast. Yeah. And he went, no, it's not. And I was like, oh, no, it's not.
Well, I think that's the secret of Gary Marks, right? Is that he's an unusual guitarist, but it's quite sparse, but interesting stuff. But it's not, you know, he's not got great musician chops. He just made a good noise.
Because Alice is the Gary Marks version of the thing that Hussey does later with the sort of the scales, as I was talking about. It's not quite scales, but you know what I mean, right? Yeah. Alice does the same sort of thing, but it does it the same but different because it's Gary Marks. I tell you what, we've not really mentioned. The Damage Done. Every time I listen to The Damage Done, I think, A, it's really the same band that did First and Last and Always, but also I think, B, Jesus, who sat down and said, right, let's record this as our first record?
Because it's just on drums, right?
Yeah, it's just insane. A Watch on the B-side. You just, I mean, Home of the Hitmen is what it is, but Watch is just such an absolutely insane thing to decide to put down on vinyl.
Songs?
They must have had something.
Well, they covered Teachers, right? The Leonard Cohen song. That was the other thing they did.
Yeah.
So I would never have heard Leonard Cohen if it not the Sisters of Mercy. I remember finding the cassette, Leonard Cohen's Greatest Hits, and seeing the Sisters of Mercy track on it and listening to it, and then discovering my love of Leonard Cohen because the band called the Sisters of Mercy. You know, I mean, that's how you discovered music when you're 15 in Devon. There's not, much.
It's how I discovered ABBA.
So after JR knows I'm the world's biggest ABBA fan. It's ridiculous. Honestly, yeah. So I struggle with people covering ABBA songs.
Right.
So I never really liked Gimme Gimme Gimme.
Oh, really?
I never really liked it. It's I don't know. To me, they're just perfection. I've just ruined my streak. Been on here
That's the perfect ending to a Sisters podcast. Is I love ABBA
for an ABBA for me to out myself as the world's biggest ABBA fan. Sort of thing.
To be fair, Mark, you might be an ABBA fan, but I've met much bigger people than you. And on that note, so that was the Sisters of Mercy. I don't know what we'll be doing next, but something crazy. But these two guys were Eric and Mark. Thanks for joining me for this little journey.
Thank you.
It's been a lot of fun. Until we do this again, I was JR.
I was Eric.
That was Mark.
And we will speak again soon.